iPhone 12 Pro Max, the most powerful iPhone ever. Of all the 4 iPhone models Apple released this year, this phone is in a different league. Not just because of its bigger screen and battery, as is always the case with the Max line, but also because of a more superior main camera. Better even than the iPhone 12 Pro. But how much better? And is it worth the $100 premium? Also, this is a big smartphone. Are its portability trade-offs worth that extra battery? And is it your gadget match? Hi, I'm MICHAELJOSH. You've already seen our iPhone 12 and 12 mini reviews. Now it's time for the big boy. This is our iPhone 12 Pro Max review. If you guys love review videos, consider subscribing to our YouTube channel. Anytime this week, we'll be hitting 600,000 subscribers, and with your help, we can reach our next milestone. When I first picked up the iPhone 12 Pro Max, my first reaction was, wow, this is big. Which to me comes as a surprise since I also use the iPhone XS Max and 11 Pro Max. But these impressions are not without reason. The iPhone 12 Pro Max is taller and heavier. And now, because it has flat sides instead of tapered rounded edges, that also accounts for its beefier feel. So before you decide on this phone, make sure you're set on a big phone, because it is. And if you're unsure, it might be most prudent to go to a store to see how it feels in the hands. That said, having used iPhones of many shapes and sizes over the years, trust me, you'll get used to it. It may not always fit in your jean pocket, but after a while, you'll forget how big it is. And other phones will feel too small. This year's batch of iPhones have something called ceramic shield as the top layer of their front screens, supposedly giving the display 4 times better drop performance. That said, it's still a glass phone, and if you have small hands like me, you'll definitely want a case. Because of all the lovely finishes this year, especially that gorgeous Pacific blue, I want to use a phone caseless, and on the 12 Pro, I felt confident doing so. The 12 Pro Max is so big, and in the days that I did go protection-free, I made sure to hold it with 2 hands. It's just not a one-handed kind of phone. Of course, with its size comes a whole list of benefits, including the biggest display on an iPhone, the biggest battery on an iPhone, and the best cameras on an iPhone. Most folks who choose a big phone value a big screen, and I get it. Whether you're perusing a website or flipping through the pages of a digital magazine, a bigger screen is always better for consuming content. The 12 Pro Max has the biggest display on an iPhone ever, larger than last year's 11 Pro Max and the XS Max that came before it. It's an excellent Super Retina XDR display, an OLED panel with superb contrast, and up to 1,200 nits of peak brightness, plus support for several HDR standards including HDR10 and Dolby Vision. That means TV shows and movies that support it will look great, and just as their creators intended. I just finished watching Ted Lasso on Apple TV and The Queen's Gambit on Netflix, and I'm really excited for season 4 of The Crown, which starts next week. All of these shows support Dolby Vision, which you can enjoy on the 12 Pro Max. Let me know what you're watching by sounding off in the comments section below. Gamers too will prefer this extra screen real estate. Maybe not the fact that it only has a 60 Hz panel, but I guess that depends on what kind of gamer you are and what kind of games you play. I personally don't mind 60 Hz on an iPhone, but it's worth pointing out. But because its competitors are offering faster screens, I'm obliged to bring it up here. Only here on my 12 Pro Max review, as I expect it might be a deal breaker for some Pro users. Speaking of immersive content, I pointed this out in my 12 mini review, but notice the 12 Pro Max has more speaker grills than both the 12 mini and the 12 Pro. I assume this means larger speakers because the 12 Pro Max has the loudest speakers of the bunch. In a bit of a departure from what it usually does, This year's iPhone 12 Pro and 12 Pro Max have different cameras. That's why the camera bump and these circles are larger also. Apple says the 12 Pro Max has their best camera ever. But the phone has 3 cameras, 4 if you count the selfie camera up front. So which one are they referring to? Definitely it's got to be their main wide-angle camera, which has plenty going for it. A large 1.7 micron image sensor that's almost 50% larger than the 11 Pro Max, and a new kind of optical image stabilization that's built into the sensor instead of the lens. Apple is calling it sensor shift, something that's been present on high-end cameras like my Sony a7S Mark III that I use to shoot my videos, but never before on a smartphone. All of these improvements deliver photos with even shallower depth of field and better handheld nighttime photos. Like the 12 Pro, the 12 Pro Max has a telephoto lens, but with 2.5 times optical zoom versus the usual 2x, equivalent to a 65mm focal length. Finally, it's got a 120-degree ultra-wide angle camera, the same one that's on the iPhone 12 mini, 12, and 12 Pro. But enough jibber-jabber, let's take a look at some samples. We begin our journey on a gloomy fall day in Manhattan. It's been raining all week, but this review video needed to be shot. If you have a phone without an ultra-wide angle camera, you're missing out on dramatic shots like this. And now on the iPhone 12 series, you get night mode on this camera. So even if you're shooting in the dark, shots turn out great. Apple also deserves props for tuning its camera so well that when you shift from the ultra-wide angle to wide, the results are so consistent that one might think they were taken using the same camera. The same applies to night shots. Sometimes you're not close enough to the subject of your prospective photo. In this case, it was this mural of Mother Teresa. With the 2.5x optical zoom lens on the 12 Pro Max, I was able to get this close. Closer than what's previously been possible on an iPhone, including the 12 Pro, which has 2x zoom. Depending on the situation, 2.5x can be too much, but sometimes it's just right. That said, being able to punch in closer comes at the cost of a slightly slower lens. So when using the telephoto lens in low-light situations, expect the 12 Pro to produce brighter and sharper images sans any night mode. But really, where this extra zoom comes in handy is for portrait shots. Portrait photographers prefer shooting people inside the 70 to 100mm focal length. The 2.5x zoom lens on the 12 Pro Max has a 65mm equivalent, an improvement over the 52mm lens on the 12 Pro. Take a look at these comparisons. I think the 12 Pro Max shots are much more flattering. Now onto the much-hyped new wide-angle camera. With Deep Fusion, the iPhone takes several photos and stitches them together using machine learning to produce photos with plenty of detail and texture, as can be seen in these photos. With Smart HDR3, the phone is smart enough to light different parts of a photo, handy for tricky situations like this one, where the background is brighter than the subject. Look at how Chai's face is still very well lit. And now, the moment you've been waiting for. Some comparisons versus the 12 Pro. Does the larger sensor make that big of a difference? Most of these photos were shot after sunset, because it's really in low light where you can expect that larger sensor to shine. These street shots are incredible. Testament to how well the iPhone 12 Pro and Pro Max perform in low-light scenarios. Oftentimes, you'll hear me talk about depth of field and bokeh. That creamy bit of a photo that's out of focus really adds to the dimension of a photograph. And you'll find in this series that the 12 Pro Max does a better job in this department, as is expected. Now, some folks will say the differences are minimal, if at all, but I sent these photos to my good friend Todd, who is a professional photographer, and he was able to tell the 12 Pro Max apart from the 12 Pro. I know it might sound like we're just nitpicking, but pro photographers can tell the difference, and for them, it matters. The same reason they'll spend on better glass, which is why some folks would rather buy this $900 lens over this $250 one. Even if they're pretty similar and from the same manufacturer, that Zeiss lens is better glass. In some situations, it's easier to identify the 12 Pro Max's superior camera system, like in this sunset photo at Port Authority. Notice the brighter photo. And in this shot of this glass building during blue hour, notice the better dynamic range in the 12 Pro Max's photo, or in this nighttime photo of Chai. Take a look at her mask, the skin under her neck, and her blouse. The details are sharper. Again, in this shot, which looks much brighter in photos than it was in real life, the fact that her face is incredibly well lit and the photo isn't noisy is impressive. Again, the 12 Pro Max's photo is sharper, and I'm thinking that could be because of the better stabilization thanks to sensor shift. Sometimes also, the 12 Pro Max will take a photo without night mode, while the 12 Pro will default to a longer exposure. Like in this shot. Even without night mode, the resulting photo on the 12 Pro Max has better dynamic range. Exclusively on the 12 Pro and 12 Pro Max is a LiDAR sensor, which uses laser beams to measure the distance of objects. One practical use is improved augmented reality performance, like when playing Minecraft Earth. But because LiDAR basically measures depth, Apple is also using it for low-light photography. When it gets dark, LiDAR is used for autofocus, and thanks to it, you can now use night mode when taking portraits. Later this year, Apple ProRAW will be enabled as a feature on the 12 Pro and Pro Max, giving photographers even more control over their photos. If you're the type of user who spends hours on Lightroom tuning their photos, this will really make the iPhone feel even more like a professional camera. Now, if you really want to exploit what the iPhone 12 Pro Max can do in terms of low-light photography, then put it on a tripod and try out some extra long exposures. These next photos were taken by Singapore-based photographer Darren So, one of Apple's Shot on iPhone winners for 2019. All these photos are straight out of camera. Pretty impressive, no? One reason you should consider the 12 Pro Max despite its size is its significantly larger battery. During my time with the phone, I got around 10 solid hours of heavy use. That's about 6 to 7 hours of screen on time on a combination of Wi-Fi and 5G. On days when I wasn't pushing as hard, the results were even better. The 12 Pro Max got me through a full day with some left over for the next. This phone is a battery champ, and that's also thanks to the power efficiencies of Apple's A14 Bionic chip. Charging speeds are respectable too, using the optional 20-watt USB-C charger that Apple recommends for fast charging. In my tests, I got to 15% in 10 minutes, 47% in 30, and 83% in an hour. A full charge took 1 hour and 50. The iPhone 12 Pro Max also supports Apple's new magnet-based MagSafe system, which lets you easily attach compatible accessories, including Apple's optional $39 MagSafe wireless charger. If you've seen my last 3 videos, you'll know how much I love my leather wallet with MagSafe. It stays on when you need it to, and comes off just as easy when needed. Probably of particular interest to content creators is Moment's upcoming line of tripod and hot shoe mounts. I'm told they're coming later this year. So, is the iPhone 12 Pro Max your gadget match? If you're looking for the most feature-rich iPhone available today, look no further. The iPhone 12 Pro Max lives up to its name, and it's worth every penny. It truly is the best iPhone one can buy today, and it deserves the GadgetMatch seal of approval. During Apple's keynote, a few things stood out to me when they talked about the iPhone 12 Pro and 12 Pro Max, calling them the photographer's iPhone, and saying that their devices the movie industry can now count on as an essential piece of equipment. While I'm sure many casual users will want this phone, Apple has intentionally designed it to cater to the needs of photographers and videographers. As a content creator, I like knowing that the phone in my pocket can also serve as an extra camera, or one I can use when I don't have my professional one around. If you're deciding between the iPhone 12 Pro and Pro Max, but are hesitant because of the heft that comes with a big phone, ask yourself if you'll benefit from a larger display, a bigger battery, and better cameras at a time when you might be spending most of your time at home. If you find yourself watching more content on your TV than on your phone all of a sudden, if you have access to a charger most of the time, or if you're like me and aren't traveling as much, if at all, and can't take full advantage of this phone's amazing cameras, then sure, maybe the 12 Pro Max is overkill for right now. If that's the case, get the iPhone 12 Pro instead. You'll be plenty happy with it. Speaking of, our full review of this phone is coming up next, so if you want a deeper dive into the A14 Bionic chip and the impact of 5G, then you should definitely wait for that video. We'll put a link up here and down below once it becomes available. That said, I always try to be a glass half full kind of person, and hopefully very soon we can all go back to our normal lives. If you're looking for the best camera on an iPhone, or a smartphone for that matter, maybe for work, or maybe to document your child's best growing up moments. If you're a gamer, or love binge watching TV shows on your daily commute, or if you're a heavy user and long battery life is imperative, spend the extra $100 and go max. So, have you decided? Which iPhone are you planning to get? Let me know in the comments section below. We have plenty more videos to come, a lot of buyer's guide, a lot of photo comparisons. Let me also know which video you'd like to see, and to make sure you don't miss any of that, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit that bell icon so that you get notified as soon as we upload. Follow me on social media for lots of behind the scenes fun stuff. And as always, make GadgetMatch.com your daily habit. Until the next video, I'm Michael Josh. Thanks for dropping by.